All right, welcome to the Triglavian Times, or as I lovingly call it, the clusterfuck. I'm your host, Sabbat. My co-host, Reece, is here, showing his face today. And then
Hello, hello.
Kylon.
Hello.
And then we have the kamikaze of Wirashoda and the brave person of Edencom supporters joining us today, Arsia. And then we got Balance Man Extraordinaire Stitch.
Hello.
And Senior Phantomite, who, if you don't know, he is no longer part of Snuffed. So I was hoping Briss was going to be here today. Can't make it. Life reasons or wife reasons, whatever way you want to put it. So it's kind of chuckling that this is going to be a Declarations of War 2.0 roundtable.
Hey, well,
um,
without somebody else being there lying, we got a lot of truths told.
yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these guys about 5 minutes pop to talk about why we should vote for them if you haven't voted yet.
Oh dear.
And then we'll get into some fun little questions, things we'd like to see, get your guys' opinions on some things that, we'd like to see as Triglavians to come around. So let's just start with Arsia, since you have had time and on CSM recently and got your platform kind of done already.
Okay, so this year there are a lot of good candidates, and a lot of people are generally saying a lot of the same things as far as we need more ships in space. I think that's one of the mantras that's been repeated more than anything else this CSM season. I, for one, ran for CSM 16 on a faction warfare platform. I came in 11th and got half a term after Forgot Legends stepped down, and I still got my entire platform, whatever the circumstances of that may be. They announced pretty much what I was aiming to get done at FanFest. And I think that it's very important to have somebody who cares about invigorating this content of faction warfare that has been overlooked for so long on the CSM, and have non-block representation with a different perspective. And with my RP background and my how I advocate for lore as a content driver, it puts me in a unique position to be in the room and be effective as CP is going towards the storyline arcs method of content delivery rather than the quadrants.
Anything else you want to cover, Arcia?
As a candidate, my focus is obviously I have faction warfare, the security space, and then small gang content in general. As a member of a small group, I care about smaller groups being able to flourish in this game. I think a lot of stuff drives people into bigger blocks, and I would be an advocate for stuff that helps the smaller guy. Things kind of like tying it to Podgen, more stuff like the Flashpoint style PvE that has a high chance of PvP happening during. The Flashpoints are a rewarding PvE site that serves as a catalyst for PvP because people fight over it. And it has a soft cap of like 10 to 15 ships, where if you bring too much more than that, your payout suffers. So I think that sort of model is a good one to produce more content throughout various regions of space. Like, for example, in faction warfare, like I hope the battleground sites take a lot of inspiration from the Flashpoints.
Yep. Nope. I can see that. Phantomite, we'll go with you before we get to the Balance Man Extraordinaire.
I'm Phantomite. I love PvP. I will PvP almost anywhere where there is a reasonable, achievable style of PvP available. And the more available and reasonable the PvP is, the more people will do it, and the more of it there will be. We've had 6 years of the Gigablocks controlling the game. controlling the story for new bros and controlling the narrative that is told to CCP, which is often incorrect and self-serving. And it's time that came to an end. It's time that selfish Cold War desires for the game were put in the bin. These people who adhere to that mentality are put in the bin so that the game can recover with people who actually want to play it.
Can agree with that. Stitch, solo extraordinaire. I love that you always start out with your I only have one character and play one character.
Oh yeah, now you've already said it. Now
Mhm.
that's it. I guess I'm done. You know.
Hey, I'm also in the same boat, so I can understand your pain.
I'm going back to that same boat.
There's several people like that.
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, I play Eve with one character, one account, so I don't have any alts or anything like that. So it kind of just gives me a different perspective on, kind of every interaction with the game. Like I do industry, I do exploration. I scan, I PvP, I do market stuff, whatever. With just this one account. So again, it gives me a different perspective compared to a lot of other people and how they play the game, and I think to some degree it allows me to see where there's certain imbalances, and kind of the quote unquote casual play style. Obviously I'm playing Eve at a higher level than most people, at least as far as like a solo account goes. Because most solo account people are probably just again, they're more of the casual play style. They log in for a few hours, play, and then they log off for whatever reason, doing PVE or Bissels or maybe a little bit of solo. So I've been able to accomplish a lot with just that single account, single character. And then the other aspect is I've been able to get 6 things put into the game since 2015. Without being on the CSM. So obviously my ideas are either good enough for CCP to use or my ideas align with what CCP already thinks. So in terms of being able to discuss changes with CCP, I think we're already on the same mindset. So that'll just help things go smoother, and I can provide important feedback that, again, in the past has already shown that they'll listen to. We all play the game for various reasons, but I think the main reason is, we like spaceships. Eve has over 250 different ships, I believe, and I hate seeing that we're flying the same ships over and over and over again, or dealing with a meta that has restricted the amount of ships that we can fly because nothing else is really viable within the meta, because we're always dealing with either overpowered ships or ships that have needed changes for a long time, but CCP is hesitant to change.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can go after, and I'd like to help CCP kind of direct that and get us back into a good spot and actually make big meta changes. Like, I don't think there's been a big meta change in a long time, and I think there needs to be a shakeup. Like, people need to, as cliche as it sounds, especially for Eve, people need to adapt. They need to be presented with something that's like, hey, this is not like what I've been playing for the past 5 years in terms of ships. I got to like relearn some things. I got to see, how these things are going to interact with each other, and then we can go from there.
That sounds perfect. I like that because it's more content.
Yep.
I love watching people fail.
Yeah, and I mean, almost
Well,
every
fail
all
and
the
then
content
learn.
in Eve is based around spaceships. Whether they're big spaceships, small spaceships, whatever the case may be. If you're mining, like I feel like there's a lot of people take for granted ship balance when it's the direct connection between the game and yourself. You're flying ships,
Yep.
So
yep.
there needs to be changes there.
All right. We're gonna get into some questions here. I just want to start off because you guys all spend a lot of time in low sec or no low sec or no faction warfare. And it kind of addresses 2 things at the same time. Brought this up with Drakeiden since he's our Pachman candidate. With faction warfare, when Aurora announced that potentially pirates might be able to get into it also. So they'd be able to take part in faction warfare the same way as the empires do. All that ran through my mind the second I heard those words was Triggs and Edencom need to get into it because you could fix the broken Like half of Trig's, I know Edencom, I'll get to Edencom in a second, Arsia. Half of Trig's LP store is broken and you can't get anything from it. And it's all stuff that's like clothes and stuff for your character. You can't get any of it. Edencom got the Shaft Hardcore LP store I don't even think exists really. Like it could
That's
fix
the D.
yeah, it could fix yeah, it's a DED. It could fix the problem and give them a true LP store and then kind of bring back those fighting. Yeah, I know EM would still side with, Mimitar, but it could still bring back that little fighting between the groups. And I think it'd be an interesting dynamic. What are your guys' opinions on that?
So I think logically, um, over time, it definitely makes sense to extend the allegiance system to every major faction in the game. And Triggs and Edencom are one that would be really easy to do because you have you could really center a lot of their objectives around Pochven, honestly. Like you could say Edencom's objective is for all the Edencom players to kill 100,000 Triggs in Wirashoda. And
Yep.
Triggs could have an objective to kill 100,000 Edencom in Angry Man, right? And like whoever gets that number first wins their objective and gets more bigger rewards. And like the same way, kind of like they explained the objectives would be during FanFest, where like the empires might have capture a system as an objective or supply the front line as an objective or something. And that would lead to not only people getting in fleets and going to shoot Triggs or Neocom, but shooting each other to prevent them from reaching that goal first, right? Like if I have an Edencom fleet and you have a Trig fleet and you're out shooting Edencom, my instinct isn't to go shoot the Trigs faster, it's to go shoot you first, right? And I'm sure you are in the same boat with shooting me in the reverse situation.
Yep.
So extending the allegiance system to everything, whether it be Triggs, Edencom, Pirates, and even stuff like the SOE or to Society of Conscious Thought, it just honestly leads to more opportunities for catalysts of content in all like various regions of space. Triggs and Edencom could put a lot of stuff into Pochven, a lot of goals into Pochven. Pirates could put a lot of goals into NPC nullsec, and so on.
Yep. Stitch, Phantomite?
Apologies if I go over anything that you just talked about because apparently I'm having some connectivity issues every now
Sorry.
and then, but like not at the moment. But as far as introducing extra factions, pirate factions, other non-pirate, main four empire factions into the faction warfare mix, I feel like it's a cool idea on paper, but for obvious reasons, I am going to want to see a strong resurgence of regular faction warfare with the main four factions first. I want to see it done. I want to see the baseline of what they've promised completed, and I want to see it functioning and iterated upon until we can give that thumbs up before I am happy to recommend to CCP that it's now a good time to start developing extra factions into the mix. If faction warfare doesn't get done properly and isn't iterated upon properly and isn't made to work at a basic level first, then adding more into it will just break it, and then they'll leave it again for another 8 years. So I'm excited for it, but I don't want to see it initially at all.
I can agree with you on they need to fix the basis of it. But there's also that, I mean, I kind of skipped over you, Stitch, if you had any comments on it, but every time I look at the faction warfare spaces, like they're all low-sec systems. Yes, they're technically part of whoever's controlling them, but why can't Galente fight Amar and steal a system out in the Galente in the Minmatar Amar war zone. Like they're still fighting against their allies, and they're still fight. Like I'd like to see more than it's just two areas of space being fought over.
So I think, as far as the initial revamp and content development goes, it should definitely start by focusing on the four empires, like Phantomite said, and getting all that working properly. I do think in the long term, after you got the four empires and all the mechanics around that working properly for the allegiance system and faction warfare, developing content for other allegiances is a good idea. I definitely do agree that focus on the four empires first and get faction warfare as we know it to be improved and developed on, like you said. But
Yeah.
I kind of foresee a lot of the other allegiances as not even faction warfare as we know it, but like aligning with Garistus would lead to content in Venal, not so much. I mean, I guess they could come down and shoot the Caldari, but
Yeah,
like
I
kind of, yeah.
it depends on how they build it. It depends on how they build it, because I could also see, my fantasy of seeing Incom and Triggs fighting again could be in, Incom fortresses, Incom minor victories, Trig minor victories, Pochvin. I can see that as providing content more all over the place than just, hey, it's got to be in faction warfare.
Yeah. But yeah, like when I speak about anything other than the four empires, I am talking about like way down the line, I think. Because four empires are what need to be focused on first, because that's like the core of the game going back to its roots,
Mm-hmm. I could agree with that. Steve?
So from my perspective, I guess there's two things I wanted to touch on. The first one was the thing that you mentioned about, Galente, like trying to take something in Minmatar, things like that. In the past, when I was in faction warfare, like you were, quote unquote, allied with the other faction, so you had Minmatar Galente and you had Amar Caldari, but they never really felt like allies. And especially in Minmatar, like we would have Galente guys come in, and the only thing they would do is just try and AWACS you. So like I don't know how many times I would just sit around and like three Galente guys would warp in on me in a Plex, and then they'd try and kill me. Like I don't ever remember there being a time where there was like a joint fleet between Galente and Minmatar to fight Amar or anything like that. So if there was a way to incentivize that kind of cross coordination, maybe not all the time, but for certain events, and kind of make it easier to incentivize that, I think that would kind of immerse it a little bit more, at least within the lore. Because again, they're allies. Like, why are we just completely disregarding the ally part and just saying, all right, you have this space over here, that's where these guys fight, and then this space over here is where these guys fight, and technically you can go over there if you want, but you're kind of a far ways away and stuff like that. So that was the one thing I wanted to touch on, is just, we have those alliances, but they don't mean anything. And more often than not, it just means the other group comes in to kind of abuse that alliance, because they can just shoot you without really much repercussion. I mean, technically, if they keep doing it, I think something happens where they might get kicked out. I don't remember.
For alliance shooting your allies, you don't get kicked out.
Okay.
Like ever,
okay.
Right? Because you don't lose standing for your position.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, like,
I was confusing it then with if you shoot your own people within your own faction, then. So then, so there's the second part of this was was the original question, was talking about pirates. I think that would be really interesting, because there are groups that live within faction warfare that aren't participating in faction warfare per se. They're acting as role playing as pirates. So I don't know if giving them, the umbrella term of you're since you're not joined with the main faction, you're a pirate now, and you need to choose your pirate faction. Like, I don't know if we need to shoehorn them into that, but it's nice to have them have that as an option.
Yeah.
Then more of what kind of Arsia was talking about is, honestly, I think it'd be really cool, and obviously I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon, if ever, if you had faction warfare like mechanics and NPC nullsec in the regions where those pirates control, and maybe they're fighting Concord, or they're fighting something else that's happening there, and they can have their own kind of thing with that NPC space, and then judging how they control the system determines the missions and rewards that the pirate factions get. Because right now, like, pirate NPC space is just people running burners all day, and it's normally botted, and big groups already control that space because they don't have to protect anything. Maybe they have to protect the hub occasionally when someone tries to bubble the mission station or something. But for the most part, it's just people are just AFKing out there and just farming LP. So it'd be nice if there was a little bit more of an interaction there. And of course, that could be moved into faction warfare as well if they're going to integrate pirates into that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just when Aurora announced that, I just had tingles of Edencom and Trig going at each other again, because that was right when I came back. I hopped right into the Trig Edencom war.
Also, during the faction warfare roundtable at FanFest, do you remember the Delegate Zero said, as far as the alliances holding or not holding, going in and out, anything's possible? Because there was a question asked about that by me, actually. Because there could always be a situation, like if anybody remembers Kaleli, where the Minmatar went and shot the Glende in a story. There could definitely be goals like that happening.
No. And then you'd have angry triangles flying out of Paku and just attacking faction warfare wherever they wanted.
I mean, that could happen too, right?
Mm-hmm. We've drifted into faction warfare a little bit here and there as pirates. Yeah. All right, so I know Reece has some burning indie questions.
Well, it's a good question to gauge where we are at in different opinions about the post-scarcity back into the boom. Where do you think that industry and mining is right now?
I mean, how many of you played before 2016? Okay, so most of us here in this channel. So before industry kicked into a much higher gear than it had ever been, industry was obviously still a thing, but and mining was still a thing. Right now, as we saw, we have far more people involved in mining than we previously had for the volumes of ore that there were. This maybe I can get some more educated opinion on this, but does that not suggest that mining has become a more viable career choice for people starting their career and people in the middle of their career than it was during the Rorqual era?
I will admit, so I did a show when they did the price hike, and the second I saw the price hike, I raised your 33% price hike by unsubbing 5 accounts of my 6 accounts, because I literally mined probably about a rough estimate 2 to 4 billion cubic meters of moon goo every weekend with 6 accounts, and I just won't do it anymore.
My point being that the game was in a better overall state before Rorqual.
Oh, it was. It was. I started the game as a miner, and that's how I made my money to buy my high grade snake pod, my first Mac to get into incursions. I mean, that's how I played the game.
So I will preface this by saying I do not consider myself an industrialist by any stretch of the imagination. But I've always gotten the opinion, and this is basically from the perspective of somebody who has only ever like PvP mined, right? Like mined somebody else's moon because it feels like PvP. But I feel like mining is a really bad profession for newer players to get into because it almost requires multiple accounts to be worth your time. And maybe Stitch has comments on this because I'm a dirty multi-boxer myself. But whenever we get like new pilots in the Alliance, a lot of us tend to have the opinion that they should to recommend to them to go do exploration because that's a better one account activity for your time. Because it's not a multi-boxable activity, so the prices tend to be higher for what you get from doing hacking and scanning and all that. Then mining with one account feels awful, even on an R64 to me.
I mean, something that I previously presented to CCP is, first of all, don't tell players coming into the game that mining is a viable profession at all until you change mining to make it into an actual game to play. And I think that there's two ways that they should deal with that. Number one, they should introduce alternate ways of acquiring raw materials in the game, ore and things like that. As a suggestion I came up with, what about prospecting, where you spend the majority of the time playing a game of some kind, doing some kind of exploration or hacking, and by the end of the effort you've put in, you then just go and collect the minerals that you have prospected from this asteroid. Something along those lines, rather than sitting there cycling a laser.
Yeah.
Basically,
I
don't tell new players to
can agree
mine
with
when there's
that.
no game there.
Yeah, and it just screams, please multi-box this, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I mean, as a new player starting out, like, you're going to be in a venture and you're mining in the same belts as someone that's got a bunch of orcas or exhumers or whatever, and you're just like, wow, look at that 100,000 ISK I made in the past 30 minutes, when the orca guy is, just farming the whole belt in front of you. And then obviously like ice mining and stuff like that is kind of the same thing. So it's just, for the effort put in, obviously it's pretty easy for the new player. But I mean, again, most players don't want to just sit there and mine because they'll end up quitting. And yeah, it's a very obvious profession to be like, this would be a lot better if I had more accounts. And again, from a new player's perspective, especially when our sub prices is $20 a month now, they're not going to be like, yeah, that's something I want to do, is spend $40 or $60 on a game every month just so I can mine effectively or better than with a solo account. So I agree with Phantomite that it should be more active. Or maybe you can still do it passively, but you're not making as much as if you could do it actively. Like, an easy example is like, how you have the hacking mini game for relics and data. You have like a similar mini game when you're mining an asteroid, but if you're active and you find the perfect node or the perfect mining sequence, you get a buff for the amount of minerals you get out of the asteroid. Something like that. It doesn't have to be that. I'm just using as an example to where you have a choice between actively mining something and getting a reward out of it compared to just AFKing and scaling infinitely. And maybe that could give solo accounts something a little bit more, or just someone who's actively playing, where, hey, yeah, you could scale this infinitely with 5 accounts or whatever. But that solo person who's there playing that game, being able to participate and get higher yields consistently can maybe be a little bit more competitive. So they're not just feeling like they're being forced to scale infinitely. As far as industry goes, I think I see where they were going with some of the changes, but I don't like most of them.
Yeah, I can't agree with you on that one. And as a person that flies a lot of trig ships, I am actually like tickled pink with the prices of hulls right now, because they are a lot cheaper than they used to be. I mean, they're back down to historical, well, not necessarily historic lows, but they are a lot more. The price point is a lot better than it used to be.
I mean,
Right.
Something I really think that feels bad for me, and maybe some of you different CSM candidates have some ideas on it, but you invest more skill points into getting crystals and getting all these cool things, and then it's like, oh, you get this crystal, you can waste more and mine more, and it just doesn't feel so good as, oh, you could just put on some faction strip miners or a regular strip miner and you waste nothing.
Yep.
It doesn't feel good.
It's expensive. It's expensive as all get out, Reece. I know, because my exhumers on my characters are like 650 million ISK just because of the strip miners.
We would
But
like to know your location.
What system is that?
They're all docked up,
That's
ready to
cool.
dump everything to my main because they're all going offline. I'm a smart man. I'll announce it now. I'll announce it now that I don't mine anymore because I literally all my structures are gone now. I purged everything.
And then like with industry, like so when I did industry, obviously I wasn't like doing large scale operations or anything like that. I was just kind of casually doing stuff like in faction warfare. I could build the fleet ships, that I bought from LP. Most of the time, I just exchange LP for the ship itself.
Yep.
But there was the option where I could get the BPC and just build it with minerals. Now they've incorporated all these extra things in the battleships that like we don't really need battleships to be more expensive. At least like T1 and faction, especially not Navy, because Navy haven't been rebalanced since 2013, and it shows. Like we don't need to make Navy even more undesirable by making them more expensive. And then the capital changes, yes, to an extent they need to be more expensive, but not to the degree that they went. And then then they're just adding way more complexity to the whole situation, and in the end it didn't even have the desired effect that CCP wanted. They were wanting people to lose a bunch of capitals, and all it did is just made people hunker down and not use or throw out capitals, because now it was like a 6 to 8 billion replacement cost instead of 1 or 2 billion, and they just kind of sat on those stockpiles.
I do think talk about like dreads and dread bombing. I do think like a happy place, I think for dreads for like a complete fit would probably be maybe around that like 4 or 5 zone, not like 8, 9, whatever they're going for now. I think that 4 or 5 that it's still tolerable to dread bomb, but that 1, 2 is just obscene. When I can make a frigate almost 1.5 billion ISK, like if I want to, but
Right.
it's a frig and I can troll people with it.
I would probably say 3.5 is reasonable for Dread
Yeah.
Bomb. I mean, especially because you're considering just whelping them anyway. Yeah, I mean the gigantic pendulum swing with capitals, because to be honest, like capital proliferation or super proliferation isn't really necessarily an issue because capitals are so cheap. It's because there's no restriction on them in terms of them being docked, which is an issue with citadels. Like if you still had to have like a coffin tune for your super, they wouldn't proliferate like they did. Or if there was some other penalty to having a bunch of supers, then this whole thing with scarcity might not have even needed to happen if they just restricted the way that capitals interacted with citadels and things like that. We wouldn't have needed to go through scarcity to deal with these massive, capital blobs if we didn't have them just, freely roaming around and being thrown at literally everything because they could.
Yeah. Kylon, we haven't had anything from you yet. What's your burning question?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about faction warfare, but what's the major change they're proposing? Is that people can join it without having to join their entire corp?
Yep.
Well, one of the
That
most
is one
important
of the changes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important changes is undoubtedly going to be that the PvE is up for change. We've seen with Pochvan that you can blend PvP and PvE together at the same time, whereas until this moment, it's largely been 2 separate activities, and PvEers always have to run from PvPers because everything requires min-maxing of your fits, that kind of thing. By doing this blended content, it blurs the lines in the best possible way.
And it does what Stitch likes too, is it changes up the meta. We've seen in Pochvan, those of us who run OBS fleets or goes to dunk on OBS runners, they're min-max for PvE, and a small PvP fleet can come in that's a fraction of their size and watch them whelp their like multi-billion ISK fleet, which is a nice little change because it changes what the meta is.
I'd definitely love to see more sites that work like the Flashpoint.
I
Maybe
think that
low
the
and
Eden
null.
Dome side flashpoint are a big area of opportunity for low sec. Because right now they don't get as much love as the Triglavian side because the Eden Com fortresses and minor victories are all spread out all over the place, whereas the Potchman ones are connected in like a loop.
Ah, yes.
Right? So you can go around the loop and find all your flashpoints. Whereas if you want to do the Edencom ones, you kind of have to wait for them to come close to you or go blopsing around like the T3 fleet and find them out of the like 50 something fortresses that are spread all over the cluster.
We have had in our home system that we use, we have had the Edencoms one there. There was a good like 6-month stretch where we had one all the fucking time. Like all the
Accelerator?
time.
Like to know your location.
Nope. I want EM coming in and setting up camp.
run your flashpoints.
No, we actually did make some agreements with some people where they because they were making good money off of them. They're like, dude, if you give us like 10% of what you make, we'll let you know when they're up and running.
If you want to see a funny kill mail, you can search for my Guardian losses. Somebody with negative Edencom standing joined the fleet, and I repped them, and the Morris one-shot me.
Were you sitting still, or is it really that good?
No, it was just I wasn't sitting still. I was orbiting with an afterburner.
Damn.
I was at range from the Moros though, because the Moros was friendly. Right? It was the friendly Moros that warps in after you kill the
Oh, damn.
Nitra.
Yeah.
Friendly.
Friendly. All right, so let's get into some more Pokemon based stuff. I brought this up with Arsia a little bit, and you guys were in comms too. Home mineral fields are completely and utterly fucked. Someone needs to. I don't know if CCP knows if it's completely screwed or not. I know
They're
they're
completely fucked. I made like several $100 million out of that this week.
Yeah,
That's
but I'm
not
just
what it
saying the
is.
warp-ins. I'm saying the warp-ins and trying to warp out. So I know a lot of people complained initially because you could warp to 0 and you'd have rocks 150 kilometers away from you. And so they pinched things in, and then CCP went, oh, well, while we fix these and we kind of pinched in the asteroid belts, they're not as huge as they were. They went and they blew up the size of all the asteroids. So now if you warp to 0, you literally are bouncing off rocks trying to warp off for a good 5 minutes.
Normally you're inside a rock.
Yeah,
when you
or
land.
yeah, you're inside a rock. It is
Depending on how they spin.
It is bad.
So do you have to warp at range then to prevent bumping, or can you still bump?
That's one way.
You can warp to range, and then you're kind of in a technically maybe in a bad spot. And then depending on where you're warping from, you might have cloaky hunters already sitting on the home field, just waiting for you to come in to blow you up.
You think that favors the miners or the hunters?
The bouncing around, I feel like it favors the hunters because I have warped in with a cloaky Eris, and a miner left his miner ones in the field. It was just a venture. And he was talking some crap in local, so I just went to where his mining drones were, dropped a bubble right when he got close, and then scrammed him and held him down and killed him. It does help the hunters, I believe, a little bit more. And if you have like slippery peats and stuff and long range already, you can warp to 100. If you can cloak, you can. If they warp to 0, you can blap them off the grid before they can even warp off. Because they will just bounce, they will ping pong ball around that asteroid belt to try and get out.
So it just sounds like
It's just hard to move in there.
Adjust the asteroid
Yeah, I mean
proximity, or make their size smaller again.
Yeah, I think they should have thought about it a little bit. Because
what would be the problem with just making you fly through them?
Yeah, Pokemon ore is
making
huge.
them non-collidable.
Yeah, it's just
that'd be nice.
I mean, it would just solve the problem in like the easiest way. There must be a reason why CCP insists that physical asteroids be collidable. I mean, I don't really care about this. Oh, but it's realistic thing because we warp up to the edge of a station on the opposite side of its undocked tube and we get sucked into it anyway. I don't really care about that because I want the game to be good rather than. I mean, this isn't a sim. So why can't we just have it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big concern. I know there's some other concerns out there, and my mind is kind of blanking on them right now. But that's just one from the indie side of me. I still like to mine. I started playing Eve, well, on my original tune that I hold just for token purposes. I started in 06, and I never mined with them. I was a mission runner, and then I realized, well, Galente, because this is 06, 07. Galente had better starting stat points before you could remap and stuff, and I was like, Galente is better for what I'm going into combat wise. And then I started being a dirty miner to make some money. So I just think about the miners a little bit because, I mean, it's my starting point in Eve pretty much.
I started mining in a tormentor, so and then I went into exploration, and then I became a sociopath and just shot people for the rest of the
Yeah, I'm super excited myself to go the Stitch route again. It's been early 21 was when I spun up all my alts. So I'm happy to hop back into, well, I'm just going back to my one character and I can cloak up in a Cloaky Hunter and roam Pockman and pick off random people. Reece, Kylon, is there anything you guys want to ask? I'm blank. There's one that I know I wanted to ask these guys because I listened to their Declarations of War podcast and I thought it could cross over to Pockman. Well, let me just think for a second.
Well, what about, like, how would you like to approach dropping structures in Pod? Because I would like an Edencom option and a Triglavian option.
Did you say dropping structures in Pochven?
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
well, what is the PvP scene like as the structures have diminished?
There's still a good bit of lost ISK in Pockven. If you look at it, it's one of the top regions in the game.
Now, what would be what are the pros to re-adding certain types of structures back to Pochven?
It'd be more fighting.
Yeah.
Why would it be more fighting?
But on the flip side, there's also some of us that just don't want any structures in it at all.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, why would they cause more fighting to have structures there?
Because there's some systems that are empty,
Yep.
even from NPC stations, that are really good spots that would benefit a organization of having a structure there.
Yeah, but surely there being fewer safe places and fewer places to base does a little bit towards leveling the playing field.
Reece, I get where you're coming from. When we first were dealing with us burning down Pockven, I kind of was like, they should come out with something for trigs to be able to put down structures. Now I'm kind of like, dude, kind of fuck everyone. If they don't have trig standings, they can't dock, they can die.
But I also like giving an Edencom an option on that as well, not just trig positive people.
I wish there were some like Edencom stations.
Yeah. Can we shoot the Edencom stations and maybe if we do enough damage, it blows up one random ship in the hangar?
No, you shoot the trig stations for the same.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess my only concern with more structures, which I mean I haven't done a whole lot of Pockven, so I could be wrong here, but I do see a lot of battle reports, and also hear that a lot of big groups are going in there to PvE and stuff like that, and they're going in through, using the filaments or whatever the case may be, or wormholes. So you're dealing with like Pandemic Horde. My only concern is if they can plop down their own structures in there, then it seems like it gives them a bigger foothold to kind of end up owning the space and pushing out smaller groups, which kind of comes back to everything we've always seen with big groups in areas of space. They end up kind of consuming all the local content.
Everything.
The problem is Pandemic Horde and Frat own a bunch of shit in Pachman that is actually it
A
needs to be.
bunch?
Yes, Otella is covered in pandemic horde structures.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was
those
Pandemic Horde that came in and
those things.
eventually destroyed Smokey.
Yeah. So a lot of structures need to be slated for burning.
I don't see it helping them that much, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, listen, my point was, if the PvP is working really well in Pochven at the moment,
I don't.
then surely just taking the random and unnecessary risk of adding structures into the mix has a far greater chance of harming a good thing.
I agree with you, Phantomite.
I might give it up if they got rid of the timer for swapping clones in an NPC station.
Yeah. I get you,
Yeah,
Kylon,
that's something I'm after. Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I
I
also
agree
agree
with
with
that a lot.
Phantomite.
So,
don't.
But basically, in short, no to structures in Pochven. If it's good, don't risk ruining it, because there's not a lot of good left in this game at the moment. So
Yeah.
don't hang yourselves.
It's very good.
My big thing with what Stitch was saying, big groups coming in. What's funny is, goons learned it first. You can't take over Pachman. So then Pandemic Horde came in and was like, well, goons gave up on Pachman. Pandemic Horde came in. Pandemic Horde, after a couple months, realized they can't take over Pachman. And now Frat's trying to make their attempt. And it's just the revolving door of null blocks come in and they realize this space is not friendly to them.
Well, no, they come in and they realize that it's not blob friendly, and that's what we want them to realize.
It screws them over because they can't, they min-max on numbers. They don't min-max on
They
pilot
can't get
skills.
a foothold by putting down structures to start storing infinite amount of people and ships.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is just me. I like to ask this mainly because, well, it'll make Arsia mad. But I like to ask this randomly because it is a trig podcast. If you could have, I'll question this one different to you, but to Stitch and Phantomite, if there could be one thing you could add to the Pachman ship line, what would it be? And Arsia, you can have EM ship line. Well, not EM. EM time ship line.
The trig ship line.
Trig ship line. It could be drones. It could be whatever you want.
I feel quite strongly about this. I would absolutely love to add nothing more to the trig line. I think that it's in a good place. I think that when people see something as having a missing hole in a lineup, especially with the trigs, that's erroneous. I don't think that just because a perceived gap exists that it should be filled. If you fill every gap in the game, then it's no longer a game of trying to find, the right combinations for things. And the problem is, you should never be able to find the best combination. There should never be a best combination. I know that there are balance issues at the moment that have been going on for a long time, but the moment that you allow people to build a perfect fleet, you've completely screwed the game.
Yep. Stitch? Anything?
So, I mean, that's a whole other topic that me and Phantomite could get into probably. I disagree in terms of not having a perfect. I disagree in the fact that there should always be new things coming out to some degree, as long as they fill a niche and they're not overpowered to some degree. Obviously, we don't want to make it to where you can, form the invincible fleet just due to a combination of things. But there are still things that exist that could be expanded upon, or even just make more general purpose ships. And with the precursor ship line, which is what I'm gonna talk about here, because that's how CCP has it labeled. It's not just the Triglavian ship line; it is the precursor ship line, which could potentially include drifters. It could include, other things, other races within that ship line. So whether or not we need drifter ships, maybe not. But at the same time, the other part of me is like, that seems pretty fun. It would introduce new weapons, new ships, new hulls, more things to tinker with. Obviously, we probably don't need the Drifter super weapons associated with them. Unless, I mean, or maybe we do. Maybe that's a true counter to the Marauder spam now. Is we all need to be flying Drifters, and then we can
Cruiser
release the.
drifters with
I know
DDs.
you don't believe that, Stitch. I know you don't believe that we should have an anti-marauder ship.
cruiser ships with DDs on them. I just heard Stitch say that. Uriel is probably screaming right now, all excited. No, I mean, I agree with you on that one. I mean, the only thing I ever hear with guys about the trig ship line is T3C it'd be unviable. I mean,
What would it be?
The Icky and the Vedmak are already strong ships as they are, so you don't need a new cruiser. The Zarmzad and the Rodiva are really good Logi ships. I'd lean towards either a Frigg, a T3D, just because it'd be interesting to have a T3D, or they already have the ship
does
lines.
what?
That they
The
already
key
have
thing is that does what though?
I don't know.
Well, that's what
I
we
leave
have
it
to
to
do.
Stitch.
We
Stitch
can't
does the
say
balance.
something would be. We can't say, "Hey, this would be cool," if we don't know what exactly we're proposing. Because if we don't know what we're proposing, then it could be something
right. Well,
which just ruins balance.
I'm just proposing it because I'm a big trig head. But like they already have the transport ships in the game. They have the models. Like, why can't they
that ramps up how fast it warps?
Yeah, why can't they toss in the big triangle-shaped transport ship? I mean, I know miners that want ramping up mining lasers because they think it'd be an interesting mechanic. I personally would like to see drones.
Say interesting. I say that would just be overpowered, given that mining is something where you sit static. So it would now be the new required ship.
Well, no, I'd say there'd still have to be loss and all that stuff, but it'd start out lower. Your cycle time would be a minute. You'd still kind of get. You have to sit there long enough, and then Pachman mining, you have to be on your toes. But like I personally want to see drones added for the trig line. I think it'd be fun for basing structures to have drones that ramp up their damage.
But we've got a ship that does that. So why do we need
I know, but it's just it's that there's little tiny things I would love to see happen. I don't necessarily think it's right for the game. It's just me being a triangle. Arsia.
Many lasers is better than one laser.
Arsia. Edencom ships. I mean, Thunderchild's broken. We already know that. But if you could add something.
The correct answer is find something for the Thunderchild to do. But the meme answer is an Edencom fax that just stops the fight by ripping everybody. No. I don't actually think that's a good idea, but I think it's a hilarious idea. The correct answer is fix the Thunderchild so it can do something, right? Like,
yeah.
But I mean, if you're just gonna ask me to fangirl, I'm like, I love battle cruisers, so give me a cattle bruiser. But that's just fangirl, not so much brain.
I mean,
I'd if you don't mind, I'll jump in on Edencom ships because I have my own bone picked with those anyway.
Well, you do all the balance work, so I expected you to want to chime in.
Edencom Logi with bouncing cap transfer.
Like my biggest problem with Edencom, and hopefully someone will offer a counter to me because it still doesn't make sense to me how people are satisfied with the extreme niche that Edencom fill. But my issue is that if you have an Edencom ship, it can't do what every other ship can do, which is focus fire one target. Like you can't do single target damage. I mean, technically you can, but your damage is so low, like, there's not really a reason to use it. Obviously, I know there are certain situations where, like, the Skybreaker can be good, kind of solo. The Cruiser gets used in, like, Abyssals and PvE and stuff like that, but, like,
it's used in novice buffs as well.
The Skybreaker?
Yeah, Skybreaker fleets.
Yeah.
But
that's like a fleet of them, so you're kind of dealing with the lower overall damage of it. And my thing is just like, why can't we have it to where there's two different ammo types? One for chain lightning, one for single target damage, and then just have like a long reload. So if you're going from like single target to chain, you have like a 30-second reload, or even just give them any reload as a long reload. Like that's the downfall of it.
Well,
So that way you can open up the roles more and say, hey, the Thunderchild, hey, you can use the single target ammo on it, and it's like a normal, relatively normal battleship. If you have a specific role for it, then you can use the chain lightning ammo and utilize that mechanic instead of it just being subjected to being useless essentially, unless if you fall within like this exact criteria to where they're actually kind of okay.
that's fascinating, actually. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, but I mean, in theory, if you give it a single target ammo, then you don't have to buff the multi-target ammo, because as a side purpose rather than the only purpose, I feel that that's in a pretty good place as it is, that side of it, in this scenario that you mentioned.
I actually was spitballing that with a couple of guys that I was doing the smuggler event with, because we noticed that Stormbringer was the only ship that the ammo was actually bouncing onto other ships in the event. They were, you watch Confessors and other ships die to it. And we're like, but the smaller ships when they're shooting at you don't do it. So why don't they just add this ammo type to the game? Because that'd make more sense to have a single target and a bouncing target one. So I agree with you on that one, Stitch. I think that'd be a great change up for EdenCom.
Right, because like a lot of the issues with EdenCom right now is, we see the limitations or the supply chain issues with EdenCom already, but it's in such a small number, it's not like a huge deal. But there's not a lot of people that are like coming up to the task to try and deal with the supply chain issues. Obviously, there's issues where the LP stores are broken for EdenCom, and that's a separate issue. But if there was more demand for EdenCom, I feel like there'd be a lot more pressure on CCP to fix these things, and there'd be a lot more people willing to try these things and actually get us to that point where we can find out, okay, what's broken with them, what needs to be balanced, what needs to be fixed. But we're just not really getting there because you can't use them in like 90% of the scenarios within the game. So we're kind of on this like long, slow burn process with EdenCom because we just can't get people into the ships just doing normal things with them that every other ship can do. So that's kind of why I'm offering this whole thing. Now the pushback I've gotten on this same idea before in the past is people tell me that not every ship needs to do the same thing, but I'm just like, well, out of all the ships in the game, why are we all just saying that this one new ship class that just came out that isn't really well utilized is a ship class that we're going to sit on and not make any changes to and just continue this super niche kind of gameplay?
Yep. I totally agree with you. It's I know some Kybernauts out there that actually fly EdenCom ships, and I tease them and make fun of them all the time. But if they expanded the capabilities a little bit more than what they are, I think it would be more well used. They mainly use it for mission running stuff, like where you can bounce targets and delete stuff off the grid faster.
I think for single target ammo would make it like incredibly good in abyssals.
Yep.
Because right now it's good, but like two of the bad rooms in a row can kind of screw it, from
Yep.
what I hear.
But it's still like that, they need to do something. It is totally underutilized as a ship line. It's too expensive. I mean, the loot I was getting Tech 1 light drops for Battleship for the Stormbringer, and I was like, how am I selling this for, 350 million ISK when it's a Tech 1 module?
Right. And I
Like,
mean
it makes no sense.
and the other issue I have with the EdenCom ships is just like, so EdenCom is supposed to be the opposite of Triglavian. Triglavian does a large amount of damage on a spool up on a single target. EdenCom spreads that out. But Triglavian like have like a laundry list of utility bonuses. It's like every roll bonus you want, Triglavian have it. Then you look at like EdenCom and it's just like nothing. You get no utility. You get no cool bonuses to like tinker with. You get no utility highs. You get no drones except for the Thunderchild, which gets one utility high, and then you get 25 in through your drones, which again doesn't really matter because you end up just shooting your own drones anyway. So it's like, why didn't they, like, Triglavian, I think, don't they have a cycle time bonus for smart bombs?
Yeah, sure.
Or is
Bonus.
it cap reduction?
I think it's cap reduction.
So
So,
they
like-
needed to make the Edencom ships the opposite of the Triglavian ships in every way, and the Triglavian ships are good.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I mean,
Econ ships suck.
has anybody at any point considered that maybe the for example the battleship should fill more of a utility role rather than a straight DPS role, and maybe the battleship should be the shield nester?
Well, see, here's the issue, I think, with the battleship. There's no modules that buff the weapon system, except target painters. But you can't target painter, like, every target that it's bouncing to. I mean, I guess in theory, if you're a god with supers and their burst projector, maybe you can. But, that's kind of unrealistic. So there's no, like, I think the Thunderchild could be a lot more usable if there was modules that you could actually use to buff the application of the weapon systems. So you have like a mid slot or a low slot or rigs to buff the application, because there's no module that buffs the Vorton projectors. Like, you can't use TEs; they don't buff the application. I don't know if they buff the range.
There's no
actually.
drugs
I don't
anymore.
think they do. I don't think they buff it at all.
I mean,
Yeah.
if these modules in theory would make these ships usable, then doesn't this mean that these modules are required to make the ships usable, and therefore CCP is fitting your ship for you?
To a degree, but it also indicates you need to make fitting decisions on what you're trying to do. Like, if you're bringing a Thunderchild against other battleships, it's probably workable, where you don't need a bunch of modules to apply. If you're bringing a Thunderchild to apply to a bunch of hacks or cruisers, then you probably do need modules, so then your tank goes down, which is a fitting choice, which, in my opinion, I'm always very much for fitting choices in the game. Having everything given to you from the beginning without making any sacrifices, I don't think are ever good balance choices or balance decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's fair enough, but if this is the only thing that would make it useful, then it is required.
I just know that there's no more drugs. No drugs help them out. There's no implants. Like, every implant, it does not apply to the Vortron weapons. Basically, at the beginning there was the drug, and the drug had a time limit for it to time out. And there's nothing. There's no implants, no drugs. Nothing affects their weapons anymore.
A Vorton computer,
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
something like that.
Yeah, they need to touch on something for Edencom ships, because there is that severe lack where trig ships do get the benefit and they don't.
And the other thing that would make sense with Edencom anyway is, like, Triglavian have the smart bomb bonuses, but it doesn't apply to the damage. Maybe it's rate of fire, maybe it's cap bonus. Again, I can't remember. I had to double check. But, like, why don't Edencom have smart bomb damage bonuses? Because that's one thing that people have asked for a lot is, I want a ship line that gives me a bonus of smart bomb damage. And you can kind of balance this already with, like, the Thunderchild, because it has one utility high. You could just drop the gun and have two really strong smart bombs, or things like that. Obviously, it would be harder to justify the bonuses on, like, a frigate and a cruiser, but I mean, again, those could be niches that people want to use. I mean, how often do we see smart bomb Proteuses and things like that? Well, if we had an actual strong ship line that you could use for pipe bombing and things like that. Maybe we're not utilizing the weapons of Edencom, but it gives them another role to use instead of just being the gimmicky chain lightning ship that only works in super specific scenarios.
Yeah.
Pipe bombing is an interesting one to bring up, because pipe bombing is almost entirely based on player skill rather than a dedicated ship being there to improve your ability to do it. I know that it was only as an example, Stitch, but I know it was only an example, but I would be very hesitant at trying to better bring pipe bombing to the masses, because I like it when something is doable with skill. I don't like it when that toy is given to people without the required skill.
Yep.
So I guess it depends what that bonus exactly was. Like maybe range would be okay, you know.
It's to be difficult to pipe off. Yes.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want them to have resistances to smart bombs. I wouldn't want them to have improved damage from smart bomb.
Well, no. Well, I mean, see, that's the other thing though with Edencom, at least with the frigate and the cruiser, is they have the highest resist bonus in the game. So that kind of synergizes with if you're going to be smart bombing yourself. You already have the higher resistances, at least for a T1 ship, because they get a 6% bonus where every other ship gets a 4% bonus. So, again, it's an example. It's more just trying to highlight that Triglavian has all these interesting mechanics you can utilize that isn't locked in just with like the weapon system. Like you could make, a remote repair Leshak or Vedmak or whatever the case may be if you really wanted to, and just forego the gun completely. Obviously, you have the Zarm and the Rodiva for that now that they actually got their own kind of Logi line. But there could be more avenues for them to explore rather than just being I'm the gimmicky chain lightning ship that is only useful in super specific scenarios. Like they could have expanded that roll bonus to do more interesting things with it, like they did with the Triglavian ships.
Yeah, which I mean, getting on Triglavian ships. I mean, some of the stuff that one of my favorite Leshaks that I have is I just call it my PvP shack, and it is a heavy newt, 2 heavy newts and a medium newt on it. And basically, if I catch someone that is a smaller ship than Leshak, I chew through their cap and they're screwed.
Go ahead.
And I just feel like Edencom. I mean, yes, I know it's only 3 ships, but they severely lack anything besides, from my perspective, when I look at them. Yes, I know people try to use them for huge fleet ops to have that chain lightning, hit a bunch of people and watch Logi panic. But it's like otherwise, I only see them in like small use for PvE, and I don't really see it used any other way. Go ahead, Arsia.
I would say, and this is probably a terrible idea because bombs exist, but like if we're still on the subject of adding an Edencom ship, what about like an Edencom recon with AoE target painters? But like bombs exist, so that would really make it kind of overpowered.
Yep.
So it's like hard to address.
Yeah,
I mean, you could have like a remote tracking computer ship that Edencom has that gets bonuses of remote tracking computers, and then release a remote tracking computer specific to Vorton projectors. So it's kind of acts as like a support ship for Edencom. But then it also has another role of just being a really good remote tracking computer ship, kind of like the Scimitar, just without having Logi bonuses.
I mean, you could give it shield Logi bonuses.
Right. I mean, you could. Yeah. Kind of like the Rodiva and the Zarm, except it just Logis everything within a given range.
Yeah.
You'd have to reduce how much it lodges, of course, but
yeah.
But that'd be interesting. All right, let's start getting into wind down mode. Unless Reece or Kylon, you got anything left you want to ask these guys?
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, we'll get into wind down mode. I mean, I did the show on Thursday, so I still have no kills because I'm still trying to finish moving in my new place. So let's. I'm sure Reece. Reece, I doubt it. You're too much indie, so you haven't killed anything. You might have killed something in the past 2 weeks.
Let's see. The past 2 weeks?
Yeah, since the last show.
I killed some people at Ob's Point. That was about it. It was nothing too memorable.
Nothing fun. Kylon, you were on Thursday, so I doubt you. You actually no, never mind. You murder people more than me, so.
I killed like 3 Leshaks and a Balgorn this morning with my Varger.
Okay.
Not by myself, obviously.
So we like to do a little bit of funny kills, or memorable kills. In the past about 2 weeks, I like to give people a spread of time because sometimes with low player counts in certain areas of space, you don't find things. So if any of you guys have something you guys want to want to say that was a fun kill for you guys?
I've been flying really terrible fits lately because I'm trying to. I'm for a lot of the things that I do for balance. I sometimes purposely fly ships and underutilized weapons to kind of find their strengths and weaknesses. So I've been flying dual 150 rail ships lately. So I have a dual 150 Eagle and a dual 150 Ferox right now that I'm kind of tinkering with. And dual 150s are actually really terrible. But I've been fitting them to bait frigates because they do track kind of decently, especially when you kind of skew them with a tracking rig and then use javelin. They get up to like close to 30 tracking. And then I have double webs on the Eagle. So I did kill a Magus yesterday that tackled me for a frigate fleet. So I was able to kill the Magus and then get out of there before their Logi got back. So that was kind of entertaining. And then I killed a Mackinaw with the Ferox, which isn't really a great kill, but he did have Ore Strip Miner, so at least I made a little bit of ESC out of it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of money. Phantomite, Arsia?
I was to say I've been doing a bunch of frigate PvP today. I'm on a mission to I've got a huge number of ships in this station here, so I'm on a mission to work through some of them, throw them into some situations, and just lose a few of them in the pursuit of some fun.
It's what frigates are meant for. I love flying frigates and yeeting them into the sun.
I keep trying to throw this Sveeple into a situation where it'll eventually die, but I keep on just killing stuff with it. I tell you, the biggest strength of the Sveeple is that nobody flies it and everybody else has forgotten what it's capable of.
Yep. Arsia?
So I've been all over the place recently. We've been having little kerfuffles with some local gay campers recently in Metropolis. And night before that or two, I hung out with Galmill a little bit, and we had a nice little couple skirmishes with some like T1 ships and stuff. But like the highlight of this month so far was probably a fleet fight versus Test in the Great Wildlands at the beginning of the month. It was the Great Wildlands NRDS guys have been getting beaten on by Test a little bit, but we were able to show up and give them support for one timer. And it turned out to be a really good fight for us. Typhoons versus Cerberuses, which is really good for our Typhoons, obviously.
Yep.
And I enjoyed that a lot. I've enjoyed a lot of the little stuff I've done this month too, like kerfuffling with the Metropolis gate campers too.
I was half expecting it to be like a Har baby, just murdering something.
Baby.
All right, so I'm going to shout out these guys and Stitch, Arsia, Phantomite. I hope you guys end up on CSM personally, and I know a lot of people feel that way from some of the reactions I've seen from other people. Drake Iden is a great choice. I'd really love to see with Inominate, Merkel Chen, Villy, all those guys, the three guys the four guys that have been permanently on CSM forever. I'd love to see a change up in the CSM and have more independence. Kind of getting their viewpoints put out into CCP's ears to change the game instead of everyone always joining a giant null block. So you guys are my shout out. If you guys want to shout out anyone, go ahead.
I mean, Arsia and Stitch are here with me, both on my ballot. So hey, these two guys, obviously, as well as me.
You're number one on your own ballot, right?
I'm not. Yeah, I didn't make that mistake.
I actually think Stitch and Phantomite are 2 and 3 on my ballot. I forgot which order because it didn't save it between alts, so I probably flip-flopped half of them anyway.
Yeah, I think it's about the same. I guess the only other shout out I would do is Mark Resurrectus if you have any interest in wormholes.
Yep.
It'd be nice if we get a wormhole candidate on there, just so
Stick
wormholes
doesn't have to do it.
don't continue becoming collateral damage to every change.
Yep.
Let's see, there was something else I was going to mention, but now I can't remember what it was.
It's all good. That's why I call this the clusterfuck. I drink beer and mess up interviews.
I'd like
Arsia?
to give a shout out. I would like to give a shout out to you, Sabbat, for allowing your hated enemy on the show. And
I miss seeing EM in Pacman.
sometimes we eat there in Rome a little bit, but like late U.S. time zone when we have a lot of our rooms.
Yeah, I can't stay out late anymore. I moved like almost an hour away from work, so fall asleep early so I can get to work early. Reece, Kylon?
Well, I have to say thanks to all of our candidates that visited us on the show, and any of y'all that want to come around and shoot at each other in Parchment, come on over. Stitch, I'd love to see you come and try different things with our system bonuses with your fitting expertise.
Yeah, I've definitely been of the mindset where I need to get in there and start tinkering. I just need to, like, I go through the Triglavian systems that aren't Pakvin, and the wear towers or whatever don't shoot me, but I don't know if that means my standings are good or if they're just take a long time to lock me.
They take a
All
bit
you
of-
need is 0.001 and you're fine.
Yep.
You can literally go to Podfan and shoot a drone and be positive with both and not get shot by the NPCs.
Although Edencom is much more stingy on the the leveling up your standings. It's really strange.
Yeah, sometimes we have Parchment holes show up in our wormhole and we just see like a ton of Triglavian on scan. And I'm always curious on, like, should I just go over there and jump through the hole, or am I going to get like blobbed by a bunch of Triglavians? Maybe I can sneak a bomber through.
Frigates. I always chuckle when newbies are like, well, I don't have standings yet. And I'm like, dude, if you're in a frigate and we have the wormhole bookmarked, you literally can warp straight to the bookmark and jump before anything target locks you. I got all.
Forget you warp at range and then warp down to the hole.
Yeah,
Usually fine.
I have done it with all my alts that had 0/0 standings, and I just warped into the wormhole and jumped in.
So I have a really funny story. This happened shortly after the invasions that you might find funny. I was like in some region that wasn't the drone lands, just roaming solo. I was in a Harbinger, of course, and I think I was in DoW, right? And I was in a fight, and I broke point and warped out to whatever I was aligned to. And like in the middle of Delve, there was a big fleet of Triglavians exactly where I was landing at 0. And like there's like a 1 in a million chance for a wormhole to be open in a random non-drone lands null system like that, because I think there's like 1 or 2 of those wormholes to random null and Patron. Most of them are drone lands.
Yeah, they're pretty rare to delve.
So like I threaded the needle to find the one place and the one celestial where the Triglavians could yank me. And I have felt my standing at various times. Let's just put it that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just always think about that when I think about Triglavians.
I lost too many shit. I think, right when I came back, I literally came back to Eve. I want to say it was about this time, 2020. Around this time of year in 2020. So I hopped right into wanting to do the Triglavian stuff because I was just like, dude, I haven't played Eve in 4 years. Been moving around too much. Like now I'm not taking job transfers to move around the country anymore. And I was like, I should get back into Eve. Like I'll be able to focus on it a little bit. I think I lost like 1.5 billion ISK to Trigs. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to lose anything more to Trigs, and started shooting Edicom. And then Arsia fell, and then I had to jump through back-to-back Edencom systems. Made it through the first one, died in the second Edencom system, and was like, "Fuck it, I don't care about this shit here in a Mars space anymore. I am done.
I have a
I do
question
not
for you,
care."
Sabbat. So, if the Triglavians were able to have won Jark and the Amar Empire would have been completely cut off from the other empires via high-sec routes,
Yeah.
do you think that would have been a good outcome? Because Jark is the Edencom fortress, but with Jark and the Arsia, if they were both cut off, there would be no high-sec route to the Amar Empire.
It would be funny because it would set up better low-sec camping. I would love it. I was mad. I'm one of those people that is weird about Niarja. I was super excited when it fell because I was just like trolling everyone that was so mad about the Amar jitter route being cut off. And then it dawned on me after the fact, like I just screwed myself. Because
So,
I moved into Amar space before I last played. So
you know something really funny about Niarja popping when it did? It popped literally after we got done flipping Arshat. Do you remember Arshat?
yes.
Arshat
God,
is the one system that went liminal. And then we went in and we
they
flipped it
took it
all the way
back.
back to a fortress. It's the
Yep.
only system that went to a stage 2 that got flipped back the other way during the invasions. And we spent like we did shifts, but like everybody was on for like 18 to 20 hours pushing them because it was actually a ridiculous task. And then the Arja popped when we were all completely dead.
I remember being really, really tired after that one.
That was the one. Okay, so that was the one thing. Like, I don't know about you guys with your guys' jobs during COVID times. I didn't have a choice. I still had to go to work. I'm a geologist, so I have to be in the field.
It made a big difference.
So I was jealous about a lot of people being able to play Eve. Like, oh yeah, I'm in between. Like, I'm gonna make up on work later, and I'm just gonna play all day. Like, I kind of wish I could have done that, but on the flip side, I probably
Yeah,
would have burnt out at Eve a lot faster if I did.
it was kind of hard not to burn out during the invasions for sure because people were putting in those long hours.
Yeah, when I will say I had burnt out on Eve multiple times, and the last burnout was before I started moving around the country. And that was mainly because for about 6 months of me playing Eve while being unemployed, I I was doing incursions from 7 o'clock at night till 7 a.m. And then I got a job offer in Seattle, Washington, and kind of went, all right, I'm done with Eve for now. So I probably would have burnt out if I could stay home and play Eve all day, but I did feel jealous. Like, and for a long time before people had to start going back to work, I was just like, you assholes, stop pinging my Discord. Like, stop pinging Discord. I can't hop on a fleet right now. But all right,
Yeah, I got one shout out
yep,
to
I was about to ask.
I hit 10.0 trig standing today.
Oh damn!
Woo.
And you get nothing for it, so sorry, buddy.
Nope.
Oh,
You did for
okay.
every level of Eden Call.
Okay, before we end this, I have one last little thing. I just want to put it to you guys that the anchorages and the home systems, I would like, if any of you guys, Arsia, if you get your, next term, Stitch, Phantomite, I'd like you guys to kind of poke CCP and be like, can you guys do something with this? Can like people dock in them? Can like they be used? Because they're pretty, but they're the most useless thing I've ever seen in my life. And Eve.
I'm a big.
The
I
gates
am
to
a fan
John.
of adding purpose to things.
No.
That's how you get to the Triglavian home routes.
To Bouillon. Yeah. But all right, I will raid again someone, so let's have some fun. Because I feel like being nice these days and raiding other people's channels to make them feel good when they have no viewers. Oh, we'll just do this. All right, well, as I always say, do not fly safe, fly dangerous, because ships should be ammo. You should have fun. Thank you guys for being on. And if you have not voted for anything for CSM yet, if you're a lazy person like me, look at these folks, look at Tricodon, look at some of the other independents to hopefully shoe them in and disrupt CSM from null block control. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having me.